Okay, welcome everyone. This space is being recorded, by the way, so it can be replayed later, and we'll also be uploading it onto our YouTube channel. So today is all about Nym and Avalanche. So Usman, do you want to give a brief introduction?
Yeah, of course. So, hey everyone, my name is Usman. I'm one of the developer relations engineers here at AvaLabs. We're the company behind the Avalanche blockchain. Avalanche is a network of networks. So we have a network of many blockchains that are underneath our Avalanche umbrella. Most folks here are probably familiar with the Cosmos ecosystem. We're very similar in the sense that we're a network of many different blockchains, just a little bit different in the way we actually work from a fundamental tech perspective. But yeah, that's just a little bit about us.
Okay, so do you mind to go a bit more into details of what Avalanche does exactly? We know that it is a blockchain, but what else does it provide? Can you go a bit more into depth?
Yeah, of course. So Avalanche at its base layer is a unique consensus mechanism. So I'm sure everyone here is familiar with consensus. So in most traditional blockchains, a blockchain at the end of the day is just a ledger, right? What's really cool about a blockchain is that the data of it is composed in blocks. It's cryptographically linked together. And once it's cryptographically linked together, what that means is that once that data has been posted into a block, no one can change it. It's censorship resistant and transparent for everyone to see, or at least it should be in a public blockchain. But what's really cool about blockchains is that all that data is being secured by thousands of computers, all coming into agreement that the data that is being put into the chain is correct, right? And so that act is called consensus. There's been three major advancements of consensus until today. Classical consensus, which computer scientists have been studying for 20 plus years. Nakamoto consensus, which we were introduced to us by Bitcoin. And third, Avalanche consensus, which was kind of ideated upon by our CEO and a couple different folks that he worked with to be able to create this unique consensus mechanism. Essentially, with classical consensus, really cool showcase of peer-to-peer coordination. But the problem with those is that they're heavily centralized. You really can't scale beyond a certain amount of nodes in a classical consensus environment. So when Bitcoin was introduced to us in 2008, we had this really cool idea of Nakamoto consensus, which the idea was scaling to unlimited amounts of validators, right? Which is a really fundamental part of blockchain. We want as many people to be able to participate in the validation of these networks as possible. But what we learned with Nakamoto consensus is that when you scale to a lot of different nodes, it becomes really expensive and clunky to run the network. So the goal of Avalanche initially was, how do we create a consensus mechanism that we can scale to infinite amounts of network participants without sacrificing on any of the efficiency that comes with that? And so Avalanche consensus was born. So now you have the ability to be able to coordinate thousands of different validators at the same time while being able to achieve consensus in under 2 seconds. So really powerful in the sense that you can scale, in theory, infinitely to different validators, but also be able to still achieve consensus in under 2 seconds. I can actually delve into a little bit deeper on the tech side of how that works. But basically, on top of that consensus mechanism, we built the Avalanche network because the consensus mechanism is so open. Avalanche's network is actually really open as well. So you can launch any blockchain you would like. We actually launched 3 different blockchains in the initial Avalanche primary network. But now we have this concept of subnets where any developer can launch their own blockchain composed of a custom virtual machine if they'd like, any virtual machine they'd like. If you like EVM, if you like Solana virtual machine, if you like Move virtual machine, or if you want to customize the EVM with stateful precompiles, just because, again, if the Avalanche consensus mechanism is so unique and open, you can launch whatever virtual machine you'd like on top of that network.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for the in-depth description. I've read about the concept of subnets in Avalanche. Can you explain about subnets, what they are? And I believe they contribute to scalability and security on Avalanche.
Yeah, 100%. So subnets are essentially just a subset of the Avalanche primary validator network. So Avalanche has like about 1,200 validators for the primary network. If you were to launch a subnet, you're launching a subset of those validators where to validate your own blockchain, essentially. So what that does is that it gives you full control of your validator sets, allows you to build in a fully custom way. So for example, if you're familiar with Cosmos, the app chain thesis, subnets are very similar in a sense, but because a subnet is just a group of validators, you can have those validators validate just about anything. And most of the time, people choose to launch blockchains underneath that umbrella, but in reality, you could do a lot more with it. But a subnet can be composed of one or many different blockchains running custom virtual machines. Yeah.
Wow, okay, yeah, that's pretty technical, but thank you. We were actually talking about potential integration with Nym and Avalanche. If this does happen, how would an integration with Nym enhance privacy features of the apps built on Avalanche?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm actually a huge fan of Nym. I met you guys' team out in Cosmoverse.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure. I love all things privacy. I actually joined this space because of a lot of the reasons like that you guys are in the space too, like privacy, self-sovereignty, individual ownership, things like that. So for me, this all speaks to me. I think that, let's say Nym wanted to launch their own subnet, for example. You could, just the same way you would launch your own blockchain on the Cosmos SDK or Cosmos environment, you could launch that in a subnet. Obviously, it'd be a little bit different from the technical perspective on how you would do that. But let's say once that subnet is launched, now you have Nym live on Avalanche, right? And now any developer who's building on the network can go to the Nym blockchain underneath the Avalanche umbrella and leverage this really powerful privacy solution that you guys have created, right? And because of Avalanche Warp messaging, different blockchains that are already present within our ecosystem now allowing, because it's all interoperable, Nym can tap into the liquidity of all these different networks and all these different blockchains while still maintaining its privacy.
Nice. That sounds good, actually. I'm looking forward to it. And what would be like some key benefits if you have to pick a few really that Avalanche sees in partnering with a project like Nym for enhanced privacy, really?
Yeah, definitely. I think that just offering privacy to users is a really big plus, right? Most things on blockchain, even though most things are encrypted and things are hashed out, there's a lot of transparency in the blockchain space, which is really awesome, right? I think a lot of us really value just the fundamental aspect of transparency, but there are certain situations where you need to have fully private networks as well, right? And so traditionally, we have a few different privacy solutions on Avalanche where folks are using things like partial homomorphic encryption and other really cool privacy solutions to build things that are private. But again, these are all one-off things, right? There's no one network that folks can go to underneath the Avalanche umbrella that says, hey, everything you do here will be completely private. Everything you do here will be underneath the MixNet umbrella. And what that does is it opens the door to many different builders in the ecosystem who want to be able to leverage this privacy technology, right? And now they can say, hey, I have one chain underneath the many chains that are present within Avalanche where it's fully private. No one's going to be able to see what I do here. Whatever I build here will also be fully private. So there's a lot of different really cool things that would open up to the ecosystem.
Amazing. So basically, if Nym comes in, Nym will be able to create its own subnet, if that's what I understand, and then provide some sort of a MixNet umbrella that builders can leverage to build the apps. Is that right?
Yep, 100%.
Okay, nice. And how would the Avalanche community benefit from this kind of subnet and the Nym's MixNet? I know you mentioned builders will be able to use these to build more D apps, but in general, if you think about the Avalanche community, would there be direct benefit? How would it work?
Yeah, totally. I think there's a lot of folks in Avalanche, just in our ecosystem, just like there is in a bunch of places in the blockchain ecosystem that really love privacy, right? They've been talking to us for, I don't know how long I can remember, about, hey, when is there going to be this privacy solution on Avalanche? Or hey, when are we going to be able to leverage fully encrypted networks and things of that nature. And until now, we've been telling them, hey, just build it yourself, right? Because of the consensus mechanism being so open, we can support any virtual machine. We can support encryption. We can support fully private networks, but we're not going to be the ones to build them, right, as AvaLabs. So what we've always encouraged our developers in the ecosystem to do is like, hey, build it yourself. But if Nym were to launch a subnet on Avalanche, it would be the home for all things privacy on the network. And now developers, could just build freely whatever they would like on top of this framework, which is super, already built in privacy. And then for users, it means the exact same thing where now they can go there and be like, hey, everything I do here will be fully private. No one will know what I'm doing. And they really enjoy that functionality.
I see. That sounds really great. So directly building on top of Nym's framework, basically. Can I ask what other integrations have Avalanche made in the past? Maybe something similar, but not about privacy, just to enhance different features. Have you integrated with other projects as well?
Yeah, so maybe on the privacy side, we have a couple different folks who are building on our network in the ZK space. So we have some folks who are building, ZK payments rails and ZK payment systems. And so we have one team called Etropay, which basically built this partial homomorphic encrypted payment system where you can send these encrypted ERC20s to people on the EVM and basically shield your transaction data and wallet data, which is really cool. But overall, just in the network, Avalanche is a pretty big network where we have a lot of different integrations in terms of just tooling. Obviously, we have one main EVM chain, which has everything that you would need from an EVM in terms of tooling and regular support. But then we have a bunch of different blockchains as well within the network that act as their own individual ecosystems. For example, we have a team that launched a Move subnet. They have their own Move-based blockchain that is also present within the network.
I see. Yeah, super cool. And going back to Avalanche's overall mission, which I believe is building a decentralized internet, a place that people can go and use decentralized applications. How would a collaboration with Nym align with this overall mission of a decentralized internet?
The way I look at it is that decentralization really just means giving unlimited options to the user in different ways. So like for a developer, being able to build whatever you like the way that you like, right? Without any central point of failure, without any central authority, and being able to really leverage that idealism. For Nym, what that means is you guys just coming to us, being able to launch your own blockchain and offering your tech to be able to our users is decentralized in its own right. And I think this idea of a decentralized internet, not everything needs to happen under a privacy umbrella, but for the things that do want to operate underneath the privacy umbrella, they should have the ability to, right? And so that's something I really value. I think offering that solution to developers and users would be really powerful. Yeah, I think that adds to this idea of unlimited choice, right? Where you as a user could pick if you want to operate underneath the public network, if you want to operate underneath the private network. So it just opens the door to many different things.
Yeah, so unlimited options. And I'm curious, do you ever think about, like, from Avalanche's perspective of trying to build this whole decentralized internet? We already know in the Web3 space, certain adoption limitations are about the user experience, user interface. So do you ever think about limitations that decentralization could pose, and how do you overcome these?
I think there is definitely a lot to be said there. In different ecosystems, we've seen the way that different things work. So, for example, in Cosmos, I know it's very decentralized in the sense that, there's a lot of key voting mechanisms where there's a lot of key governance, right? So I know if someone wants to pass a change to the network, there's a lot of different governance mechanisms that come into play there. And so sometimes that's really awesome, but sometimes that can create for like a clunky environment where things don't always happen efficiently, I guess I should say, where you're kind of having to wait on this idea of decentralization for everyone to agree or everyone to vote before things move along. So there is that bottleneck in the idea of decentralization, but at the end of the day, when you have an open network for everyone to be able to participate. These are the things that do come up, and you have to either, pick and choose your battles. With Avalanche, it's a little bit different because we have AvaLabs. AvaLabs is essentially a corporate entity that sits behind the public network of Avalanche. So we can help expedite things in a different way where even though the network is fully permissionless and the network is fully open, AvaLabs as a company is a corporation. So we can do things a lot faster. We move a lot more nimbly. So even though the tech itself is super decentralized, we as a company are corporate, and that allows us to do cool things that other truly decentralized platforms really can't.
Okay, so how do you reconcile AvaLabs being a corporation and Avalanche itself being completely decentralized entity? How does that work actually? Does it mean that you have a central authority on top and then you just pass decisions and then have things like move along then on the decentralized side? Can you explain maybe?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, we are just helping build the tech from the back end, whereas the network itself is open. We don't have a traditional governance system like most blockchains, like Cosmos do, but we do have a lot of different voting mechanisms. We actually have something called the Avalanche Community Proposal System, where members in our community, they can propose changes if they want to the network, things they would like to see, and then folks vote on those changes, and then based upon that, we either integrate them or not. So that allows us to move a lot faster than traditional governance systems do. And it also allows us to operate within this regulatory clarity as well, where we have this corporation that we can go to other businesses with, and corporate entities like enterprises, institutions, work with them to be able to bring their tech onto blockchain into the open network of Avalanche. So from a legal perspective, it makes a lot of sense as well. But there's definitely a lot of pros and cons to it. But I would say that it's definitely something that allows us to be able to move a lot faster and provide our developers a lot more direct support with the corporation, because now we have a group of folks who are all just dedicated to supporting the Avalanche blockchain, where if it was just one open network that we just deployed and let be on its own, then there's no one directly supporting it. You could kind of think of it as like the Interchain Foundation supporting Cosmos.
Yeah, I understand. It does make sense indeed. So I was going to ask if you see Avalanche collaborating with Web2, but I think you mentioned that you do collaborate with institutions that want to move into Web3. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we have like a bunch of different partnerships with different enterprises and institutions, worked with a bunch of different large companies, but like, for example, I'll just give you guys a little bit of insight. So we've been working with like T. Rowe Price, Wisdom Tree, a couple other different really large financial asset managers. Because you can launch any kind of blockchain on Avalanche, many of these big financial institutions, they don't want to operate underneath a public blockchain, right? So they don't want to go to Aave on Ethereum and transact there, because then everyone will be able to see their data, see their transaction history, and also they don't know who's participating in the network. They don't know who's validating the network. For them, that legally just doesn't make sense. So what we did was we deployed this blockchain underneath the Avalanche umbrella, which is EVM compatible, and we basically made it KYC AML compliant, where only the folks who these institutions want to transact on that chain can. And so they have to be allowed listed in. And so we deployed things like Aave, Uniswap, and a couple other really cool DeFi protocols on there, allow listed only the addresses of the folks who these institutions want to play around with the tech. And then they get to actually utilize things like Aave or utilize things like Uniswap in a completely permissioned way. And that's one way you've seen it. Then another way I've seen it is like, we have a bunch of different really cool permissionless protocols as well. Like I mentioned, Etropay, Movement, a couple other teams, where they're open networks as well, where anyone can join, participate, deploy things in a public permissionless way. Again, it's whatever you want it to be. If you want to build fully permissioned blockchains for enterprises and institutions, you can build that. And if you want to build fully permissionless networks for developers, you can do that as well.
Yes, I totally understand. Following up on this, so you were mentioning just now about certain institutions coming to you and making their own KYC AML compliant blockchain under Avalanche. So do you see any specific sectors or industries that would benefit from the Avalanche Nym integration?
Yeah, 100%. I see a lot, honestly. Many different companies that we've talked to are actually really interested in privacy themselves. Again, like I mentioned, many of them don't want folks to know what they're transacting upon. But like this idea of a mixed net, I think is more interesting to a lot of the different individual developers that we have on the network. The ones who build their own blockchains, the ones who build their own networks, build their own dApps, build their own things within that realm. They're the ones who are going to be able to look at Nym and be like, wow, I can build things that I've never been able to build before, that are completely private, completely decentralized, just things that you really can't get anywhere else. So I think it offers that really cool opportunity for developers who are interested in that kind of stuff to just leverage the technology and build really powerful things.
Yes, thank you. So from your own perspective, so I can see you do think that privacy is very important in Web3 and mainstream overall. So in the current market scenario, what do you believe is essential to make Web3 mainstream? If moving on to a different tangent, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we're going to really need to see applications that open the door to users in a different way. For example, like when I first joined the space, I was really excited about the value props of decentralization, of privacy, of self-sovereignty, ownership, things like that, right? But until now, what's been happening is that we've been building a lot of infrastructure, right? Like a lot of different things at the base layers because it's needed, right? I think when 2020, 2021 happened, there were a lot of devs who joined the space who were application level developers, but they realized like, hey, it sucks to develop applications here in the space just in general because it's so hard. The tooling is few and it's just a clunky experience. So for the past 2-3 years, if anything, for the past 5 years, we've been, the overall industry has been building a lot of tooling. So now when the next generation of devs do enter the space, which I think will be probably the next bull market, they're going to have access to some really, really good tooling that did not exist. Things like Foundry, things like Nym, right? And they'll be able to leverage those things in ways that they haven't before, which will be really powerful because it just makes their developer experience easier. If you can make a dev's experience easier, they're going to stay building with your tech. And once they stay building with your tech, they're going to be able to see all the really cool things that they could do here in space.
Amazing, yeah. And we'll be wrapping up soon, so I'll just leave you with one last question. What are Avalanche's future plans and visions for the next few years? Pre brought one, but it would be nice to know.
Yeah, 100%. I think we'd love to see more blockchains be launched underneath the Avalanche umbrella, but a more broader goal is this idea, like you mentioned, to build this decentralized internet, but more so to tokenize the world assets, right? So we have this huge idealism of tokenization where we believe that all real world assets will end up being brought up on chain eventually. And we want to be the place for folks to do that, right? And so I think that there's a lot of really cool efforts being made by our team to be able to partner with a lot of these asset managers to bring their assets on chain. And I think that's going to really change the way that we look at the space down the line.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your insights. It was super great to have you on here. Thank you for joining. Yeah, do you have any last comments to give?
Yeah, it was great being on the space. Really enjoyed the discussion. Fan of the technology at Nym, and looking forward to see what we do together in the future.
Yes, I can't wait to see us collaborating, hopefully, to bring like a really great privacy solution on Avalanche. So yeah, stay tuned for more news on that, hopefully. Thank you so much, Usman, for coming on.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.